I will start with a short introduction into the contact center, into the user interface of the agents in this case, and afterwards, of course, we're going to go also through the to the admin and also to take a look at the outbound campaigns, what is the main topic of today's session. So whenever I log in as an agent, or before that, it's very important that it is, of course, fully flexible in terms of what the user can see, what a user can do. In this case, I stripped it down just to an agent overview, so I limited the possibilities to, in this case, just have the agent home, which is actually the user interface for handling calls. I also enabled campaigns so that this user can see which campaigns are currently ongoing. The user is able to run reports for his own calls, and also the user master data, which is basically just changing passwords and so on. So when I go into the agent home, which is the main user interface for agents, we can already see, I will quickly go through the user interface, what you can do and so on. And of course, we then focus on the dialer on the outbound campaigns. So on the very top right-hand corner, you've got your current status. So in this case, I'm in the outbound status. Of course, I can just change it, for example, to calls and media. These different states are unlimited, so you can create whatever you want to have and also assign different features behind these user states, like, for example, as I already had it before, when I switch to outbound, then I'm blocked for inbound calls and I'm able to run outbound campaigns, just as an example. Right underneath it are different phone numbers, in this case, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can easily change the device in the background, actually, or the phone number in the background. So this could either be a phone number on the PBX, which is this 1111, it's just a physical phone standing right next to me, or I could also switch to just another number, an external number, or to a mobile number or whatever. I can predefine that per user which phone numbers are available, or I could also let the user decide so that they can just enter a phone number where they can be reached, where the calls are put through. I've got a quick overview right underneath it, what the current status of my queues is. So what is the availability at the moment? What is the service level at the moment? What is the maximum waiting time of the calls and the queue? This is, of course, tailored for me. So this is covering all groups where I'm a member of and where I'm receiving calls for. Then the next part is all the information for specific calls. We're going to see that right afterwards when I'm placing outbound calls. So it's basically filled with, for example, the group, the caller number, date, time, and whatever additional information I would like to add, up to, for example, adding URLs, links, which I can directly click or open automatically, for example, to jump into a CRM based on the incoming call or based on the, for example, ticket number the caller entered before. Then my current status, I'm free, I'm available for calls. So I'm just basically waiting until somebody's calling in or I'm placing an outbound call. Right underneath, there are a lot of tabs with different information, like, for example, media events, for example, callbacks and stuff like that I received, or a call history. And in call handling, I've also got the possibility to see, for example, other team members, all the other groups I could assign calls to. And last but not least, PBX numbers. So basically all phone numbers which are available in the PBX with the status of these phones. So before I start my campaign, I will switch over to the admin interface. So you can already see in this case, I'm logged in as an admin. So of course I can see a lot more. This admin is not limited at all, so I could, with this user, change pretty much everything. But I would, in this case, just focus on campaigns to take a look what is possible with that. Campaigns are always split up into master campaigns and child campaigns or sub-campaigns. The background behind that is that I could run, like if it in this case, a marketing campaign is my master campaign. I've got some settings there. And then underneath that, I can add additional child campaigns, which are then inheriting some configuration from the master campaign. And I can then split it up in several different parts. So when I'm running marketing campaigns, then like I have it in this case, I'm running that every year. So I can combine them into one campaign, but still split it up in the background to have, for example, different contacts every year I'm gonna calling. I will start with the marketing campaigns for now. So when I go to edit, There are a lot of settings, of course. I won't go too far in detail on all of them, of course, otherwise it would take quite a long time. I will just jump to the most important configuration settings. First of all, in this case, with master in the master data, we've got the ACD group. The ACD group is actually then defining on which users are able to use these campaigns, handle calls on these campaigns, because this is coming from this group assignment. A group is actually basically just a waiting queue, you could also name it. So it can handle inbound calls, or in this case also outbound calls for campaigns. And as I said, it's depending on which users are logged into which groups they can see whether they can then run this campaign or not. Or that's just one of the most important things when I decide whether a user or an agent can handle calls or place calls. Then the dialer parameter is also quite an important one, because here I can define how I would like to run the campaign from a user perspective. In this case, I chose the CTI or manual. So in this case, I am actually deciding when I want to place calls. So I've got a list of users, we're going to see that afterwards, a list of phone numbers are going to call, and then I'm deciding who I'm going to call next, when I call them, and so on. In addition to that, we've got the preview dialing. The preview dialing should allow the user to save some time and also to have a higher call volume during the day. So when I'm starting the campaign, then the system is deciding who's the next call, and it's automatically dialing it, and it's then assigning to me. This is not something like a predictive dialing or something like that. So it's actually I'm busy the whole time, so I'm not disturbed by inbound calls or anything. I'm just seeing the contact, for example, for a few seconds, and then the system is placing the call. And for example, when the called number is busy or something, then it's automatically switching to the next caller and so on. So it should dramatically reduce the amounts of clicks the user needs to take and the things the user need to handle between calls. Most of it should be done automatically in this case. Last but not least, IVR dialing would be a possibility, for example, for automatic questionnaires or something like that. So I've got a list of phone numbers which are just purely handled within the system with IVRs. So I could call a person, ask them some specific questions in an IVR, and then save the results for that. Then I can define when this campaign is active. So from and to time, I can also define opening times and holidays. So for example, when you've got a marketing campaign where you target the called persons are usually just available in the afternoon, then of course I can decide that through the opening times when callers or when the phone call should be placed usually. Of course, this is also quite important when you combine multiple campaigns at the same time, then it's of course very relevant when a specific target audience is called. So when you have like 5 different campaigns running at the same time, then of course you could have one campaign which is usually working in the morning, the other one usually in the afternoon. So you can let the system decide when these persons are called and not let the agent need to think of that. Then just some agent parameters for different states, because it's a flexible system. So of course you need to be able to decide which states you want to have. And then you've got sub campaigns behind it, which you can assign. With the sub campaigns, you've also got the possibility to define a weight. So when you've got much more important campaigns, then of course you can give them a higher weight. And in the end, again, the system will then, for example, when you've got 100% and 50%, or 100 as a weight and 50 as a weight, then you will always have 2 calls in the one campaign and 1 call in the other campaign through the whole system in average. Now, when we take a look at the child campaign or a sub campaign, you've got the service number. So that's actually the phone number which will be displayed to the called participant. You've got the language for announcements, for automatic announcements. In this case, usually when you're placing an outbound call, then the caller would not hear an announcement, but of course you can also put them on hold and stuff like that. So it's very important to know which language it is to have the right announcements for the called participants. Then in the dialer parameters, there are a few important things. Again, I won't go through everything. We've got the maximum ring time, so especially important when you're using the preview dialing, that the system let the call ring for 30 seconds, and when it is not answered within this time, then it's disconnected and the next person is called, for example. Then how often does the system try to call one specific contact? That's also not just when it is this preview dialing, but also when the user tries to call a specific person. When you tried 5 times, then it's automatically marked as aborted in this case, so it's not called anymore. You can directly connect external systems, also quite an important thing. So there are 2 things behind it. First of all, you can, when you've got a centralized system, then still you could query upfront this separate system whether this contact is still active. Of course, it could be, especially when you've got multiple companies, external companies, for example, doing outbound campaigns for one specific company in the center, then of course it could be that another contact center is already placing an outbound call. So you can still query and set a centralized system whether this contact is still valid and still active and could be called. Then again, for the child campaign, we've also got some active times, especially as I already said, when you've got multiple sub campaigns, then this could be quite important. Then for the agent parameters, we've got automatic post call interval. So for how long are you then marked as after call work? So you're basically kind of busy, not on a call, but still you wouldn't receive additional calls or no outbound calls will be placed. Then the contact preview time is only required when you're using this preview dialing. So the system is, when you're done with the first call, for example, then the system is showing you for 5 seconds the next one, in this case 5 seconds, the next call, so you can already take a look at the name, probably some additional information which could be important, and then after these 5 seconds the system will automatically place the call. Then time windows. For each and every contact, it's possible to define up to 6 different phone numbers. And here you could decide when which of these phone numbers will be used. So you could say, for example, during office hours, it's the landline phone number. Outside office hours, it's the private phone, the mobile phone number, and things like that. In this case, I just enabled all of them for demonstration purpose. It's of course easier when I can just use any number. Then the result codes is also quite an important thing when talking about outbound campaigns, because here you can create as many result codes as you like. And that's of course also very important for reporting. So after the call, you could say, okay, I sold something, it could be a result code, or also other things, that there are 4 different types. And I created one result code for each and every type. So we've got abort, appointment, done, and delay, which means abort is the call is done. I wouldn't call again. Done means it was, for example, a successful call. So I was able to get the information I wanted to have. I was able to sell something or whatever. And in addition, we've got the delay and appointment, which means with delay, I'm actually putting this one contact back for, in this case, 2 minutes. So when I can't reach the person, or when I get to the mailbox, or when this person says, okay, please call me again in 10 minutes, then I just press the delay button, and then the system is automatically putting this contact back. And after this specific amount of minutes, it's coming back, and it will be called again. Pretty much the same with appointment. In this case, I can decide when to call this person again. So I guess also quite common for outbound dialing. I'm calling this person. The person says, okay, I don't have time at the moment. Please call me again tomorrow at 6 p.m., for example. Then I use this appointment type, and then I can decide when to place the call again. And finally, the contacts. The contacts, that's actually just a list of all of our persons which are part of this campaign. Of course, I can import them, I can export them from different systems, of course, then through CSV in this case. I've got plenty of fields available for one specific entry. Most importantly, of course, the phone number, but also stuff like the first name, last name. There are fields for bank account numbers and whatever I want to have, I can add into it. These contacts are actually in this case already available for the campaign, so they're unlocked. Because I've also got the possibility when I want to change something, I could also, of course, manually change them. Then I would need to lock them. As soon as they are locked, then they're not available for the campaign anymore. I can change something, I can reset them or whatever. And finally, I unlock them again, and then they are available in the campaign. Now, when I go back to my agent, for the agent, when I go to dialer, in this case, I cannot start dialing because I need to change to my outbound status. As soon as I'm in my outbound status, that's of course something you can decide whether it's available or not, or how the states work. In this case, I've got a specific outbound state, which is set up that I'm not receiving inbound calls anymore. So I'm purely blocked for outbound calls, and then my dialer will be available. So I'm gonna start my marketing campaign. Now, in this case, I've got the CTI or manual dialing. So I'm able to decide who I'm going to call. We've got contacts available, which is the lower of the two tables, and I've got the contacts which are assigned to me. There are no contacts in progress at the moment for me. So now I could say, okay, I would like to call Gerhard Bader today. I take a reservation. I would like to call somebody else and somebody else. Or I can also just let the system again decide. So I say, okay, I want the top 10 entries, and then they are reserved for me. So they are blocked, of course, for all the other agents. Every agent can do that, obviously. So these 10 entries, or 11 now, are just blocked for me, and I'm going through them through the day. But of course, I can also change that all the time. So I could release specific contacts. So when I already see, okay, I won't make it for the day, all the calls I tried to block for me, then of course I can always release whatever I want to do. Or again, of course, the other way around, I can add additional contacts which are then reserved for me. Of course, I don't necessarily need to do that up front. I could also just take a reservation whenever I want to place a call, and then I take the next reservation and so on. Now, in this case, as I said, it's a manual campaign. So whenever I'm ready, I'm just choosing a contact I want to call. In this case, it's myself. So I have the possibility to then decide which phone number I would like to call. In this case, I'm just taking my mobile phone number. The system is then first of all calling myself, my phone in this case, which is just standing right next to me, just to have an audio connection. Now, I'm receiving the phone call as a user in this case on my mobile phone. And then, of course, I'm talking to this person. I'm just doing whatever is done in this campaign. I could, for example, also go to a separate system where I can then fill out the questionnaire or whatever I need to do within this campaign. And finally, when I'm done, of course, either the caller is hanging up or I'm hanging up. I can then add additional information to this specific call. So I can choose, for example, this result code. So it was a successful call, it's done. And I can just add a comment, sold something, whatever. Now, you can see that on the status, I'm still connected with my agent phone. So my phone is still off hook. I'm still connected to the system, which is of course then making it easier for placing the next call, because then I can just press the call button and then I don't need to do anything else. So I'm not just, first of all, getting a call to myself because I still have an audio connection, or whenever I'm done, if I don't want to call any persons anymore, then of course I can just hang up wherever I want to hang up, and then I'm done for this specific campaign, at least for now, or for this specific call. So I'm stopping my dialer again. Now, when I go back to the admin interface, then of course I also have reports behind it. So before I go to the reports, I'm just showing you in the campaign what the status now is for my contact. So I'm going to my contact again. And we've got my entry here. So you can already see this specific entry is now done. So the result code is set to OK. So it is done. The code I said was done, and the entry is locked. So at the moment, it is blocked for everybody else. Of course, I finished the call, so there is not any reason it needs to call them again. Of course, as a supervisor in this case, I could always unlock this specific entry. I could take a look at it, I could edit it and so on, or just delete it or export it or whatever we want to do with this specific entry. But as I said, it's done, so nobody else is going to call this person anymore. Now, when I take a look at the reports, sorry, wrong button. There are two important reports in this case, which are specifically focusing on dialer campaigns. I just take a quick look at it, that we are not running out of time. So I've got the itemized call report. This one's actually designed for Excel, so usually you would export that, but of course you can still take a look at it as a PDF. So that's just a basic list of all calls which are done on this specific campaign I selected as a filter. I can see all the phone numbers, I can see the result codes, I can see how long the call was, and stuff like that. And of course, last but not least, also the agent who handled the call. Now, the second report is then a summary through the whole day. In this case, the filter I chose. So I can see on how many calls have been placed. There's just one call, actually, the one I just did. How many have been connected, answered, and what else. And in the end, of course, also the results of that. So then I could see through the day how many calls of the campaigns have been placed, how many have been answered, how many are done now, on how many are there new appointments or delays or something. As I said, that's the two most important ones. When you take a look, for example, at agent reports, and of course, dialers are also part of that. So when you focus on one specific agent, then you can also see how many calls this agent placed through dialers. Now, I'm switching to the preview mode now to show you how this works. So I'm just changing the way how the calls are placed. Now, I need my agent interface. Okay, so now when I go to start dialing, then the system starts automatically. So I won't have the possibility to choose contacts. I'm just not pressing start now because I need to talk a little bit about it before, because then it's immediately starting afterwards. So it will then just take the first entry in the list. It's placing the call. When I'm done with the call, then it's showing me for 5 seconds the next one, and then it's again placing the call and stuff like that. So I'm just starting the campaign. First of all, it's calling my phone so that I've got an audio connection. Then it's showing me the next contact, which will be called. This contact is now ringing. That's actually also just an internal phone number because it's a little bit easier for demonstration in this case. So it now plays the call to 1112. I'm now handling the call. I can do whatever I need to do on the call. I can write documentation or whatever. And as soon as I'm done, of course, I could hang up or the call participant hangs up. I can, again, set a status, a result code, which is done in this case. Then I'm pressing continue. It will show me the next entry. In this case, it's Gerhard Bader, and his phone is gonna ring in a moment. I hope he's also gonna pick up. So I've got, again, 5 seconds time until the actual outbound call is placed. And yeah, it looks like, now he picked up very well. And yeah, that's continuing, of course, pretty much forever, or at least as long as I've got entries in the campaign. Again, I'm hanging up. The next, I can add some additional information, and then the next contact is shown and so on, until sometime later I'm pressing just stop dialing the dialer, and then I'm not continuing anymore. And whenever I want, of course, I can start the campaign again and continue with the calls. In the end, it is, as I said before, it's just a phone number. So this 1111, that's an extension within the PBX. So whatever device the PBX can use, so this is just a basic phone standing right next to me, just a hardware phone. It can, of course, be the Cloudia web interface. It can be the Cloudia desktop application. It can be Teams, or it can be so-called unprovisioned SIP device, so pretty much every SIP device which is able to handle calls. And of course, also then, independent of the PBX, actually independent of devices on the PBX, it can also be any dialable number. So whatever number the system is able to dial can be used as a device. So it could be my mobile phone, which is, of course, for example, when you talk about home office, then it might be easier to just use the mobile phone for handling the calls. The user interface is always the same. And you're just deciding which device should ring, which device do you want to use for the audio channel on top of it.
One question from my side, Philip Tamar speaking. You show us that agent could decide which kind of traffic will maintain, outbound, inbound. But the question is, if supervisor can assign the particular agent for outbound, for example?
Yes, of course, it's also possible. In this case, I just need to check whether I enabled it. Yes, I did. That's actually the admin user, but the supervisor user would pretty much look the same, just a little bit more limited. But the supervisor is also able to choose for all the agents what's happening, or which phone number they're using, or which status they're in. Mm-hmm. So you can see here the list of all the agents which are available. I'm with my agent interface, I'm logged in as this agent PM user, and here I could just change the status for these users. So I've got these quick buttons, so I'm just choosing, for example, this calls and media, so now the user is available for inbound calls, or I can just switch to outbound, for example, and now the user can handle these outbound campaigns. Of course, I could also choose the device they're gonna use. So here I've got all 6 phone numbers filled out, so I could just choose, okay, this is the Cloudia phone number, for example, and then all the calls ring there.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Yeah, of course. So usually the easiest thing is to just download it first of all, because you need to know the format and stuff and what to fill out. So usually you would start with an export. You can decide which format you would like to use, or how it, for example, the separator. Now, when I take a look at that, that's not the one I downloaded, that's another one. So you've got the columns in here. So you've got, first of all, this dialer contact, not really important. You can just add the same. You've got the campaign, for example. Then just an increasing number. In this case, that's not really important. I just also kept it increasing. The first name, the last name, no, just the other way around, last name, first name. Then you have additional columns like company information, address, or whatever. And then also quite important, the phone numbers, the different ones over here. And at the end, you've also got status information. So you've here, for example, we've got the comment I added before with the typo in it, and I've got the status done in this case. This could be, there is of course also documentation behind it, which is what, sorry. And then you could just add additional entries and then upload them again. So when I'm going then to import, I'm just choosing the very same file. That's, I'm just choosing the one I created yesterday. So that's the very same file. And in this case, I'm saying I want to overwrite duplicates. And then sorry. and then I'm importing it. So I've got 40 imported records. In this case, it doesn't change very much because it's the very same file like yesterday, but then I can add all the contacts again, or additional contacts. Yes, exactly. And that's also the important thing, is that usually you would start with an export first of all to know what the structure is. So what I did in this case, I just created manual entries, one entry, then I exported it so that it is a little bit easier in Excel, that I know where to put what, and then I imported again to have all the additional entries I created here.